South Africa has a femicide rate 5 times higher than the global rate. So, to deal with the scourge, President Cyril Ramaphosa has launched a private sector-led gender-based violence and femicide response fund. It's aimed at supporting the implementation of the National Strategic Plan against GBV. Well, let's get some thoughts on this from advocacy group Wise for Africa. Its director, Brenda Marumise-Pajibo, joining us this morning. Brenda, good morning. And, you know, it's wonderful that we see initiatives continuing, we see efforts continuing to damp down the scourge, as we've called it. But it often seems like there is so much talk, more of the same around it, and very little result. Your thoughts on this particular initiative and how it needs to be used properly to make sure that we finally get it to do what it's meant to do?
Good morning, and thank you for having us. You're correct. I think, if you recall, this NSP was delivered to government in April 2020. So we are close to a year now since the NSP was drafted, completed and adopted by Cabinet. And really what we should be doing now is its implementation. And you can't implement without the requisite resources. And when we did the work around the NSP, we had costed that NSP, and the cost to implement it over the 5 years is close to 80 billion, right? And that's the money that government and all its partners should be coming to the party to ensure that it's implemented. And I guess with yesterday's events is a start of all of that, to see money being made available, and not just money, but human resources around strengthening the criminal justice system. And so it's welcome that, as the NSP anticipated, that it's a collaborative approach of the NSP, that it requires almost all of us to put energy and effort in ensuring that we reach our society of gender-based violence and femicide. So it's a welcome initiative, but what it requires then is for us to move with speed to make the changes and the structural changes that are required. Those individual companies that are part of the pledges of yesterday are also not exempted from being called to account for their own sexual harassment policies and inaction when such rears its head in their corporations.
Well, Brenda, as an advocacy group, give us some examples. I mean, you're on the ground, you're hearing from people, talking to them all the time, dealing with cases as well. When it comes to the actual money and what it actually is used for, how do we use money like this to save our women and children, and even sometimes, yes, our men as well, who are in this position, who face possible death because of the violence perpetrated against them? How is the actual money, practically, how should it be used?
So if you look at the NSP, the biggest chunk of resources that we as society and as a country needs to put towards and direct is towards prevention. We do not want to have a conversation where we talk about the death of another woman, the death of another LGBTQI individual, or the rape of another woman, of a child. We don't want to be there. We want to stop it from happening from the beginning. So we need to put effort into prevention strategies and programs, right? And that requires a huge investment in prevention efforts. It talks about strengthening families, inculcating good values and ethics. All of that work requires money to be able to do that. Awareness programs and interacting with men and women, whether at a young age, at universities, at TVET colleges, in churches, traditional leaders, everyone, everywhere in society must be touched, so that then we can all play a part in ensuring that we rid society of that. That's the first part, and it's around prevention. The second part is that as we deal with prevention, at the moment you have a criminal justice system that has consistently and constantly failed victims of violence, right? And so when you are a victim of rape in this country and your DNA is sitting in a lab, cannot be processed, and you've got a 2-year, 3-year backlog, your case is stuck for the next 3 years because there are no resources to make sure that those DNA results are processed. And I think some of these monies must go towards strengthening the criminal justice system so that we can get justice swiftly and quicker than what is happening at the moment. So if
Brenda, yes, and
Right.
I think long-term, yes, those are things that we actually need. But surely we've had enough awareness campaigns. We've had enough telling women and children how to protect themselves, telling men what they should and shouldn't be doing. What about, a lot of the time, a lot of these cases blamed on socio-economic conditions. We talk about poverty. A lot of women we know stay in bad relationships because they are financially dependent as well. They're keeping their kids, keeping a roof over their kids' heads. What about actually practically finding ways to use this money to get them away, to allow them to get proper legal assistance when it comes to getting away and getting them set up in places where they are safe? Where are we in this country in providing that for these survivors and victims?
Yeah, so it's been done by different organizations, including ours, where we literally fighting cases on behalf of women on a daily basis, on custody battles that are driven by violence. A woman who has been abused over time and now has decided that it's enough, and we need to make sure that she can leave that abusive home, she can have access and custody of her children, and she has got a way of fending for her children and making sure that they have a roof over their head and the children can continue to live in a violent-free home, right? So that's the work that we do on a daily basis to ensure that happens. If you look at the National Strategic Plan, there are 6 pillars. It's prevention, it's accountability and leadership, it's care and response, it's the criminal justice system, but also there's a chapter on economic power where we believe that you cannot rid us of this scourge if we do not give women the economic power to make sure that they can earn a living, they can leave abusive relationships and not be dependent of their spouses. Overall, is that the structural drivers of violence, which have been identified very succinctly in the National Strategic Plan, we know what are those drivers. The patriarchy itself and masculinity and male privilege is one of the many drivers of this violence, and we need to really go deeper into removing that inequality, removing the power dynamics, and dealing with patriarchy and turn it upside down so that we can have a society that believes in equity and equality in earnest and not just make statements because it's fun to do so.
Yeah.
So you're correct. We need to be spending effort and time in giving tools to women and men to be able to live abusive relationship, but also to be able to find to be economically independent so that they can live abusive relationship. Even young girls at universities don't have to be paying their fees by thinking that the only way to pay for their university fees is to be, just getting into this mentality of blessee limbo that is available at the moment in the country.
All right, thanks very much, Brenda Madumise-Pajibo. She's from Wise for Africa.